this is going to be a very weird election coming up because we have the roles of both parties. I wouldn't say they flip, but they definitely taking very unique roles where the Democratic Party is unapologetically pro-CIA, unapologetically pro-FBI, and pro-war. While the Republicans are head-faking and pretending that they are anti-imperialist and anti-war. So the political discourse over the next few months is going to be extremely confusing, guys. Extremely confusing and extremely strange. I'm going to show you probably the first example of this that we're going to see. We have the NATO left, who's going to have to explain why they support the Ukraine war and why their leftist principles lead them to support a policy that leads to the boom of weapon defense contractors in the military-industrial complex. That's the left position according to them now. So now they got to debate a right wing that is now following the direction of Donald Trump, of Tucker Carlson, who's now questioning the Ukraine war. So you guys see this dynamic that's about to happen? We're going to have progressive, a rainbow flag, Black Lives Matter profiles, defend war against right wingers. And this clip is cringe beyond measure because you're going to see how the NATO left has no defense of funding the Ukraine war, at least not one that's coherent. So,
this is sad.
So we've seen the NATO left is so bad, they allowing this guy to make him look bad because we show you Rashid Tlaib was called out by Tim Pool and his people because they asked her a very reasonable question. You say you are upset about the climate crisis, but you're telling you young people to endorse Joe Biden a year and a half before the election, despite the fact that you support the Willow Project in the military-industrial complex that is part of the climate crisis. So why are you guys allowing this lane for these people? Now, this is Tim Pool pressing Emma Vigeland, one of the voices of the NATO left, on why she support this war. And her answer, you will not believe. Let's go. Let's watch it the full time. Then there's gonna be a lot of breakdown. You will not believe how awful this answer is. This is. Anyway.
Territory without recourse, then I mean that's pro-imperialism. That's not, and that's still pro-war.
No,
yes,
a lot of people around the world do a lot of bad things. I don't think the U.S. should be an empire going and funding wars all over the world.
We're not funding wars. We're funding the defense. I mean, and there's something that you can be said where should we draw a certain line? I have already conceded that strings should be attached and we should be involved in peace negotiations. But to flatten the power dynamics here, I mean, I would imagine this is like the same argument that you hear when it comes to Israel and Palestine, right? Where Palestinians are defending themselves, and then it's, oh my gosh, they are just it's completely symmetrical. Israel and Palestine, these are two actors just battling it out. I would love to fund the Palestinians so that they were able to have a better life for themselves.
You are to the right of me on foreign policy.
Well, we already fund Israel, dude.
Yeah.
You guys hear what he just said?
You are to the right of me on
policy. And this is what a lot of these right-wing commentators are going to be able to say. I'll let the last few.
Are you against that?
That's a tougher question. I don't have an answer
to. They played that on the Majority Report as this is a got you. CJ, they was proud of this clip.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing that they're proud of this. I thought this was ripped from somewhere and they tried to bury this. They put this out. Wow.
So this is where Emma Vigeland compares the United States funding Nazis in Ukraine to the apartheid state and settler colonial project against the Palestinians. I already debunked the bullshit, ridiculous comparison. It's actually ridiculously offensive. Like, imagine Nicole Mandela, the Palestinian Community Network, these people hearing this nonsense, comparing the Azov regime that waged war against ethnic Russians to the Palestinians being genocided by the Western-backed state. It's unbelievable, Garland.
Nick, but let me just try. This speaks again to the same narrative. It seems like I'm gonna have throughout this episode is that this is so comically terrible. Like, how is anybody buying this? And let me add this before, and I want both of you to kind of comment what this added to it. This is where because I did several streams on. There's a realignment of the left. There is an absolute split where it's like, and she's part of that, the so-called left that is it's no longer, let's try to come together, Bernie coalition. There's no longer that going on. And it's just so weird to see this realignment where they're realigning with the military industrial complex, and they feel like we are realigning with the Red Brown Alliance. If you let them tell it, but if you both could, take in the video and also speak to that point.
It's only me. I'll play one more time, and I want to ask you guys about your response, because I've been through this so many times, and this is the progressive excuse for supporting Nazis in Ukraine that they compare it to Palestine. This is disgusting. But
territory without recourse, then I mean that's pro-imperialism. That's not, and that's still pro-war.
No,
yes, it is.
A lot of people around the world do a lot of bad things. I don't think the U.S. should be an empire going and funding wars all over the world.
We're not funding wars. We're funding the defense. I mean, and there's something that you can be said where should we draw a certain line? I have already conceded that strings should be attached and we should be involved in peace negotiations. But to flatten the power dynamics here, I mean, I would imagine this is like the same argument that you hear when it comes to Israel and Palestine, right? Where Palestinians are defending themselves, and then it's, oh my gosh, they are just it's completely symmetrical. Israel and Palestine. These are two actors just battling it out. I would love to fund the Palestinians so that they were able to have a better life.
You are
to
the
themselves.
right of me on foreign policy.
Well, we already fund Israel, dude.
Yeah.
Are you against that?
That's a tougher question. I don't have an answer to.
See, they think that's the got you. They don't realize how unhinged Emma Vigeland is comparing Ukraine to Palestine, considering the United States and the West literally created the Israeli state to steal land and commit a genocide against the Palestinian people, and the United States propped up and trained the Azov battalion regimes in Ukraine. Like, if you know history, you understand why this is a ridiculous thing to say. But sorry, I ran enough on this. I apologize, guys. I want to get Garland and Lee in. If you guys have any reaction, you can reply on the substance. Like, you don't have to comment on the character, but if you just want to reply to the argument, because it's so unhinged to me. But go ahead, Garland or Lee, whoever wants to chime in first.
Well, I'll say this. If you think about what she just said, it's obvious that she was fumbling around for something, because he said, why should we be funding wars all over the world? She said, we're not funding wars, we're funding defense, right? That was okay. Then why do you guys keep talking about Vladimir Putin's war if it's not a war? We're not funding wars, we're funding defense. We don't have a Department of War, we have a Department of Defense. These words mean nothing. In reality, she knows we're funding wars. She's just looking for some words to duck her way out of it. And this is critical, because what he's saying is this: shouldn't we do what we need to do to stop the conflict? Even when she made her argument about the Palestinians, what is she saying? Now, what would I say? You should stop the violence against the Palestinians. You shouldn't be bombed and attacked and apartheid and all these things that are happening bad against them. Even then, she argues, well, no, let's fund the Palestinians and give them some war machines so now they can kill the Israelis and lots of people can kill each other and that conflict can go on, as opposed to ending the conflict. So it's when I see that, I see one guy saying, why we got wars going all around the world, let's stop the wars. And the other people saying, let's fund them. And when it comes to the Israelis, she doesn't actually say, let's stop giving them stuff to kill the Palestinians. She basically says, well, let's give the Palestinians stuff so they can kill each other, keep this thing going. Plenty of deaths going on. It's what we do. But we don't fund wars. We fund defense.
She believes that we bomb for peace. Bombing for peace. Right.
Dude, it is so unhinged. It's tough to even come up with where, it's like the MC Escher painting of nonsense. Like, where does that staircase lead? What the fuck are you talking about? It's defense. The U.S. The Brown University cost of war found the U.S. has killed 6 million people over the past 20 years with just the global war on terror, just that aspect of our murderous regime around the world. Is that defense? Are we defending all those? We defended 6 million people to death. And that's the left wing of our debate. What the fuck? The left wing. That is not left. That's not pacifist. It's not peaceful. But there is such a lack of any kind of anti-war thought, anti-war discussion that this is what passes for, I don't know, pacifists or left wing. It's pathetic. It's pathetic.
That's why we feel like we have to call them out, because they will co-opt and hijack what it means to be a leftist. We see what happened to the Green Party in Germany, the Green Party in France as well. And that's why we gave the Green Party we should straight up say, Howie Hawkins is done, are we going to destroy them? Like, we're not going to allow that to happen to the left here. And there's a coordinated effort. Bernie agrees with that position. Emma Vigeland is ridiculous, but that's the Bernie Sanders position. That's the AOC position. So are we going to just sit here and allow them to hijack what it means to be on the left? Go ahead, Lee.
Well, and I love that she says, well, I think there should be strings attached. Yeah, who the hell's putting the strings on? Who is above the U.S. militarily that's putting the strings on us? And furthermore, I think there should be strings attached, and I think we should be involved in a peace plan. You can't involve the murderer in the peace plan. This is our proxy war. That's like, Jeffrey Dahmer should be involved in sitting down and talking about how to stop Jeffrey Dahmer. Are you out of your mind?
This is what I always say is illogical. It's their illogical nonsense, and it's maybe it's a PMC thing, but it always comes from this where they think they're explaining some sort of intricate sort of thinking that you have to have, and it literally comes off as being this is comically bad, and that's what you saw.
I think they use it as a weapon. Like when you see her in her argument there, they're trying to stun you with their stupidity. That's why when you first see the clip, you're like, what do we even fucking start with this nonsense? That's the strategy.
It's true. It's tough to debate because you're like, I don't even know what angle you're talking about. Like,
and I think what's important also,
that's so true. That's so true.
The discussion now of, and the discussion is, well, they're mad people I agree with way more on foreign policy than I actually agree with on foreign policy as opposed to these people. But a lot of this isn't necessarily about left-right ideology. It's about what I'd like to call a crisis of epistemology. How do we know what we know? Do we use critical thinking, right? It's a crisis of critical thinking because I can sit down with a person that I can disagree with, and we can have an intellectual discussion, a factual discussion, and I can say, I'm going to lay this information out here. And that person can say, and I'm going to lay that information out there. And you have a discussion and you can walk away and disagree. There are a lot of things going on now in Ukraine. If you start laying the information out, people left, right, wherever they are on the ideological scale, look at it and say, yeah, that makes sense. Right? There are things Tucker Carlson says, whatever I can think about his ideology, I'll look and say, yeah, that makes sense. And then someone else will say, and I'll look at it and say, that doesn't make sense. I don't have to agree with you on anything else, but I can look at it and somebody can say, hey, I don't think we should all die in a nuclear war. There, we got something we can work with. So I think what we're looking at is people who are really using critical thinking skills as opposed to those who are just going along with whatever the latest thing that they're told to go along with or to do. And there's a lot of us who push back, who when the government says, you got to do this, or you got to think this, or you got to go along with what we're doing, there are those of us who have so much mistrust that we automatically say, well, I think you're lying to me, and let me look at it and find out, as opposed to those who are out there saying, no, the government, they're here to help you. Don't, are you asking these people? You're coming up with questions and things. Put a stop to that. Be gone with you and do what you're told. And that's what we're looking at. People who's push back, people who have some level of distrust, people who want to dig and find the answers, as opposed to those who just go along with whatever the hell they're told on a given day by the people in power.